Let us not forget such fine men and women who every day offer their lives up on behalf of this great and noble calling.
Be advised, Ogden has an officer down.
I walked outside and saw about 5 or 6 officers carrying another officer to the ambulance.
And he was just covered in blood.
Our hearts are broken. We've lost one of our own.
This indeed is a very tough day for the city of Ogden, its police department, and its citizens as they mourn the loss of a young officer who had served the department and the community for only 15 months.
Police were responding to a domestic violence call at a home near 3rd Street and Jackson Avenue just after noon today when that officer was shot by a suspect. Here is Ogden Police Chief Randy Watt.
When officers arrived on the scene, they were confronted by a male in the area of the front porch. He was uncooperative and suddenly retreated into the home, slamming the door behind him. As officers moved quickly to the door to attempt to follow, the suspect began firing through the door. The Ogden officer was struck by a fatal round and was dragged from the scene by other officers. The officer was taken to McCady Hospital's emergency room where he was pronounced dead. An adult probation parole officer who was on the scene of the initial call was also struck by gunfire, has been treated at the hospital, and is recovering from non-life-threatening wounds. Officers on the scene returned fire as the wounded officers were being dragged from the scene. Once the scene was secured by additional responding officers from many agencies, the Ogden Metro SWAT team took over the call and were successful in extracting some children from the house. Subsequent actions on their part determined that the suspect was deceased inside the residence.
Tough details to hear there. Neighbors describe this neighborhood as normally quiet.
Fox 13's Lauren Steinbrecher spoke to witnesses. She is joining us now. What did they tell you, Lauren?
Yeah, Bob and Kelly. And I mean, this evening you can see still very active out here. Police from different agencies. We've got, Layton Forensics is out here. Ogden Police, Weber County Sheriff's Office has their investigative unit. And one thing that neighbors told me was at first they heard 30 to 40, gunshots, but they thought there was someone working on the roof. They thought it was fireworks. Had no idea at first until they started hearing those police sirens. And so people started to come outside. What's going on? And they say police were yelling at them to get back in their homes. Something active was happening. And so people started running back in their homes, watching out their windows, saying at that point that that's when they could see that Ogden police were carrying their fallen officer.
Heard someone yelling no, 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 and then you heard probably about 30 to 40 shots consecutively just go off.
A few minutes later, the cops had brought someone out, and they were holding him carrying him by his arms and his pant legs, and he was just covered in blood.
Now, at that point, of course, they weren't quite sure what was happening, have since learned what's happened here this evening, and, finding out that suspect no longer alive. They said it was about an hour and a half later when they heard those subsequent gunshots and police yelling clear, assuming that the house was okay at this time. So police are going to still be out here for quite a while this evening. Neighbors, still kind of processing and going back through what it was that they heard and they saw as they, start turning now from what they did see to supporting Ogden police. Live in Ogden, Lauren Steinbrecher, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Lauren, thank you. People in that neighborhood are certainly mourning with the Ogden Police Department this evening.
Fox 13's Sydney Glenn is in that neighborhood right now. Sydney, tell us what you are seeing and what neighbors around you are saying.
Yeah, everyone obviously mourning right now. It's still a pretty active scene. Let me step out of the way here at 3rd and Jackson. We're still seeing officers coming and going. You can tell there's still several officers down there. That red caution tape surrounding the crime scene. I spoke with one woman who tells me this is a really tight-knit area. She's lived here for over 40 years, but she said she didn't know those neighbors very well. She said they're pretty quiet and keep to themselves. When she heard those initial gunshots, she wasn't even sure what was going on. She looked outside, realized what was happening, and then the police ran to her door, told her that she needed to lock her front door, lock her back door, that she needed to stay inside. She said she was peeking out her window and couldn't believe what she heard. Then when she found out the news, she said she is truly devastated.
Sad for the family. It's very sad because they just trying to do their best.
I think what's really hard out here is that you can just tell this community loves each other. This community is mourning the loss of this police officer. Their hearts also break for all of the families involved. You've just seen the kindness here today as well. You've seen people dropping off food for our police officers. You've seen people dropping off water. You've seen people hugging, checking in with each other as everyone is just trying to come to grips with such a horrible situation here.
Sydney, thank you. Losing an officer in the line of duty is an unimaginable loss for any police department. Chris Bertram is a former precinct chief with Unified Police Department. He joins us by Zoom this afternoon. Chris, you've had firsthand experience with this. Talk to us about how a police family copes at a time like this.
This is a devastating time for the family, not only for the family of the fallen officer, but for their law enforcement family, for those with Ogden Police Department. I listened to some widows earlier talk on another channel, and they talked about what the first 24 hours is like, and then what goes on until the funeral. This is a devastating time. I can't even imagine what it's like for their family.
Chris, how do officers deal with the constant risk to their lives? Because every day they walk out the door could be their last.
Right. And again, situations like today just remind us that police work is a dangerous job. Most of the time, you're going to go to work. It's going to be uneventful. You won't have a critical incident. But days like today remind us that there are dangers involved, especially when, responding on something that we do on a daily basis, a domestic violence situation. These can turn very quickly.
Finally, Chris, you knew Doug Barney, and he was a dear friend of yours when he lost his life. What happened to his family? What happened to his wife? How did his children cope with this?
It's something that I think that Erica and the kids deal with daily, and days like today make it tough again. I would imagine his kids have grown up without a father. Erica has grown older without a husband, and us in law enforcement miss Doug every single day. And so for the family, I think it's something that you deal with daily. But today's like today, it is more significant.
Chris Bertram, former precinct chief with Unified Police. Thank you so much.
Fox 13 will continue bringing you more on the investigation into this officer-involved shooting, as well as a reaction from the community to the tragic loss of life. You can find the latest always on our website, fox13now.com, and also by following us on social media. And join us tonight for Fox 13 News at 9.